Cassandra threw her wine on my dress again. The deep red liquid splashed across my pristine white silk like blood on snow, the second time she's destroyed my moment of triumph. I was reborn in that instant, not as the forgiving fool I once was, but as someone with a purpose defined by more than just revenge. "Oh my God, I'm so clumsy," she gasped, her perfectly manicured hand flying to her mouth in mock horror. The sharp smell of expensive Cabernet Sauvignon stung my nostrils as it soaked through the delicate fabric, mixing with the scent of her jasmine perfume that now seemed cloying and artificial. The investors I'd spent months courting discreetly backed away from the spreading stain. I could see the doubt flickering in their eyes. How could someone who couldn't keep her own dress clean be trusted with millions in fashion industry funding? "Let me help," Cassandra purred, dabbing ineffectually at my ruined dress with a cocktail napkin, making the stain worse with each touch. The rough texture of the paper napkin scraped against the silk, creating tiny pulls in the fabric that would never come out. I smiled tightly. "It's fine, Cassandra." Her eyes met mine, triumph glittering in their green depths. She knew exactly what she'd done. The ambient chatter of the Fashion Week afterparty faded as we locked gazes, the music suddenly seeming distant and muffled. "Your dress was stunning," she said, emphasizing the past tense. "Such a shame." When she sauntered away, I remained rooted to the spot, the cold, wet fabric clinging to my skin. The investors had already drifted to the other side of the room where Cassandra was animatedly pitching her latest collection. I knew that sound, the eager buzz of money about to change hands. I retreated to the bathroom, the clicking of my heels against marble floors echoing my racing heartbeat. Locked in a stall, I finally allowed myself to tremble, my back sliding down the cool partition until I sat on the floor, wine-stained dress pooled around me. This was exactly how she'd ruined me 5 years ago, though the weapon then wasn't wine, but betrayal far more calculated. 5 years earlier, Cassandra and I were inseparable. Fashion school roommates turned business partners. We'd started our label from our tiny apartment, surviving on instant ramen and ambition. The cramped space always smelled of fabric dye and coffee, the constant whir of my sewing machine a lullaby that carried us through sleepless nights of creation. "We're going to change the industry," Cassandra would declare, sketching designs while I engineered the patterns and constructed the garments. I believed her. I believed in us. Then came our breakthrough, an invitation to showcase at an emerging designer's spotlight during New York Fashion Week. The opportunity we'd sacrificed everything for. 2 nights before the show, I returned to our studio apartment after picking up our final fabric order. The metallic jingle of my keys echoed in the hallway as I juggled bolts of specialty silk. When I pushed open the door, the apartment was empty. Completely empty. My sewing machine, gone. Our design boards, gone. The racks of carefully crafted samples, gone. On the bare countertop sat a single sheet of paper, the smooth business letterhead cool beneath my trembling fingers as I picked it up. "I've been offered an exclusive contract. Your contributions were valuable, but I need to move forward alone. The industry only has room for one of us. Good luck with whatever you do next." See. She'd taken everything, our designs, our materials, our business contacts, even my personal portfolio. She'd cleared out our joint business account of the investment money we'd scraped together from friends and family. The next night, I watched from the standing room section as Cassandra showcased her collection to thunderous applause. My designs, my stitching, my vision, all claimed by her smooth voice and practiced smile. I could smell the champagne popping around me as the fashion elite embraced her as the next big thing. When I confronted her at the after-party, she acted as if I were a stranger, a delusional fan. "Security," she'd called with a dismissive wave. "This woman is harassing me." As they escorted me out, she whispered, "The strong survive in this business. You were never strong enough." I spent the next month in a fog of betrayal, barely leaving my new apartment, a dingy fifth-floor walk-up that perpetually smelled of the Chinese restaurant below. The greasy scent seeped through the floorboards, saturating my few remaining possessions. At night, I would lie awake listening to the rhythmic drip of the leaky faucet, each drop marking another second of my derailed life. 3 rejections from design houses arrived in quick succession. "We've already seen this aesthetic in Cassandra Miller's work," they all said in different words. I'd been erased. Now, 5 years later, in this bathroom stall with wine soaking through my dress, history was repeating itself. I'd spent years rebuilding, scraping together a small but promising label, and once again, Cassandra had appeared to remind me of my place. The bathroom door swung open, the sounds of the party temporarily growing louder. "Is she still in here crying?" Cassandra's voice echoed against the tile. "Probably," another woman replied. Vanessa, Cassandra's new design assistant. "God, that dress looked expensive." "It was." Cassandra laughed, the sound bouncing off the marble surfaces. "Though I did her a favor, that silhouette did nothing for her figure." Their laughter mingled with the clicking of their heels as they checked their makeup in the mirrors. "The recent investors are practically throwing their checkbooks at you," Vanessa gushed, "after that convenient little accident." "Sometimes success requires a steady hand and good aim," Cassandra replied, her voice dropping conspiratorially. The bathroom door closed behind them with a soft pneumatic hiss, leaving me alone with the confirmation of what I already knew. This was no accident. I stood up, my legs stiff from sitting on the cold tile. The mirror reflected a woman I barely recognized, designer dress ruined, mascara smudged, eyes burning with something beyond hurt. No more. I hailed a cab outside the venue, the cool night air raising goosebumps on my wine-damp skin. The taxi smelled of artificial pine and stale cigarettes, but I barely noticed, my mind racing ahead. At home, I locked my apartment door behind me and moved with purpose to the bookshelf. My fingers found the hidden latch behind my collection of fashion history books, triggering the release of a small, concealed compartment. I pulled out a leather-bound notebook, its cover worn from frequent handling, the pages crinkled from sketches and notes. The familiar leathery scent filled my nostrils as I opened it, centering me. For 2 years, I had been developing something revolutionary. A fabric technology that would repel liquids while maintaining the luxury drape and feel of high-end textiles. Stain-proof couture. I'd started the research as practical innovation, but somewhere along the way, it had become more. Each formula tweak, each failed experiment left my fingers stained with dyes and chemicals, the sharp scent of fixatives permeating my small home lab, but I persisted. The technology was nearly perfected now. I'd been waiting for the right moment to launch, saving it for when I had more industry clout. But tonight had clarified everything. Waiting would only give Cassandra more opportunities to undermine me. I needed to act now. I flipped to my most recent notes and ran my fingers over the fabric swatch taped to the page. Wine had beaded on its surface during testing, rolling off without leaving a trace. I could still feel the smooth glide of the droplets across the treated fabric, defying what fashion had always accepted as inevitable. That beauty was fragile, easily ruined. No more would I be fragile. Like my fabric, I would allow no stain to set. I sent a text to Elias Reeson, the one investor who had appeared genuinely interested before Cassandra's accident. His family's investment firm specialized in technical innovations, not just fashion trends. "I have something revolutionary to show you, beyond fashion. Beyond anything currently in the market. Available to meet tomorrow." I didn't expect a response until morning, but my phone buzzed almost immediately. "Breakfast, 8 a.m., my office." I smiled for the first time since the wine hit my dress. Let Cassandra have tonight's victory. Tomorrow, I would begin again. Reborn. Elias Reeson's office smelled of leather and money, old money, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. The supple texture of the leather chair beneath me contrasted with my rigid posture as I waited for him to review my presentation. "You understand this changes everything," he finally said, looking up from my prototype fabric samples. His fingers had been testing the material for the past 5 minutes, pouring his coffee onto the white swatch, watching it roll off without leaving a mark. "That's precisely the point," I replied, my voice steadier than my racing heart. "The applications extend far beyond fashion." He leaned forward, the subtle scent of his sandalwood cologne growing stronger. "Commercial upholstery, medical textiles, transportation." "I'm focused on fashion first," I interrupted, a boldness in my tone that surprised even me. "That's where I want to make my mark." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Even with the broader applications being more immediately profitable?" I nodded. "Fashion is where this will make the biggest statement. Where Cassandra will see it," I didn't add. "There's history here I'm missing. he observed, sitting back. The leather chair creaked beneath his shift in weight. Business is always personal, Mr. Reeson. I held his gaze. But the technology speaks for itself. He studied me for a long moment, then pushed a contract across the desk. The smooth paper slid beneath my fingertips, its heavyweight stock communicating seriousness of intent. Initial funding to develop your stain-proof line with right of first refusal for additional investment rounds, he explained. We start small, focused launch, exclusive positioning, limited production to create demand. My hand hovered over the signature line, pen poised. This was it, the chance to rebuild everything Cassandra had taken. One question, I said, the pen pausing above paper. Why did you leave the party last night right after my accident? Elias smiled slightly. I've been in business long enough to recognize a deliberate sabotage. I don't invest in people who need to destroy others to elevate themselves. His pen tapped against the contract. I invest in people who create solutions. I signed my name, the scratch of the pen against paper, sealing my future. As I completed the final stroke, my phone chimed with a news alert. Cassandra Miller secures major investment from Westfield Group for global expansion. My stomach lurched, but I kept my expression neutral. The Westfield Group was one of the largest fashion conglomerates in the world. Marcus Westfield, the heir to the empire and a notorious playboy, had briefly dated me before Cassandra's first betrayal and had quickly become her most prominent supporter afterward. Elias noticed my expression. Problem. I handed him my phone. He glanced at the headline and passed it back. Westfield operates on trend cycles and disposable fashion, he said dismissively. We're creating something sustainable, enduring. He stood, extending his hand. Don't worry about Cassandra Miller. Focus on building something she can't touch. As we shook hands, I felt a quiet power surge through me. Cassandra might have the spotlight today, but I had something better. A vision that would render her entire business model obsolete. I left Reeson's office with the signed contract in my bag, stepping into the bright morning sunlight. The city smelled different somehow. Beneath the usual exhaust and street vendor food was a hint of possibility. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Heard you had a rough night. Fashion can be so cutthroat. Maybe take it as a sign to explore other industries? See, she was making sure I knew she'd won again, that I should slink away defeated. I didn't respond. Some statements are better made in actions than words, and instead I called my small production team together. In the cramped back room of my modest studio, with the familiar whir of sewing machines in the background and the comforting scent of warm fabric in the air, I laid out my vision for Immaculate, a revolutionary line of luxury garments that couldn't be stained, couldn't be ruined, couldn't be destroyed by someone like Cassandra Miller. They'll try to stop us, I warned my team, not needing to specify who they were. This threatens everything about how luxury fashion operates. The exclusivity, the fragility, the built-in obsolescence. My head seamstress Elena nodded solemnly. The fluorescent lights reflected off her silver-streaked hair as she ran her weathered fingers across my prototype fabric. Let them try, she said, her Romanian accent thickening with emotion. We build something they cannot break. As my team began work on the first collection, I stepped into my private office and pinned a photo to the wall. Cassandra at last night's party, glass of red wine in hand, triumphant smile on her face. A reminder, and a promise, 6 months. That was how long I had before the next fashion week. 6 months to perfect my technology, create a collection, and secure the additional funding needed for a proper launch. 6 months before Cassandra would learn what it meant to truly underestimate someone. I looked down at my still-stained dress from last night, hung on the back of my door. The wine had set, permanently marking the delicate silk. I wouldn't clean it. I wouldn't discard it. Some stains should be preserved, as evidence, as motivation. I traced the outline of the red splotch with my finger, feeling the stiff texture where the wine had dried. Then I turned to my desk and began to work. The clock was ticking. 3 months into development, Immaculate was taking shape. Our small team worked around the clock, the constant rhythm of sewing machines creating a soundtrack to our focused determination. The studio smelled of fabric sizing and fresh coffee, with underlying notes of the specialized polymers we were integrating into luxury textiles. Word had begun to spread, carefully controlled whispers about a revolutionary fabric technology that would change how people thought about high-end fashion. The right journalists had been given just enough information to create intrigue without revealing our methods. I was reviewing our latest prototypes when Elena burst into my office, her face pale beneath her olive complexion. "They're here," she whispered urgently. "Whose?" The question died on my lips as Cassandra strode into my studio like she owned it, followed by Marcus Westfield himself. The chemical scent of our workspace was suddenly overpowered by Cassandra's signature perfume, expensive and intrusive. "What a quaint little operation," she announced, looking around with exaggerated interest. "Very artisanal." I stood slowly, forcing my expression into neutral politeness. "This is a private workspace. How did you get in?" "Your assistant was very accommodating once she knew who I was." Cassandra smiled, removing her sunglasses. "I thought it was time we had a chat, designer to designer." Marcus remained slightly behind her, his attention seemingly focused on his phone, though I could feel his awareness of everything happening. He looked the same as he had when we briefly dated years ago. Expensively disheveled, practiced casualness, disguising calculated ambition. "I wasn't aware we had anything to discuss," I replied evenly. Cassandra's smile tightened. "I think we do." She set her designer handbag on my desk with a soft thud. Stain-resistant luxury textiles. Quite an interesting concept. My heart stuttered. How did she know the specific technology? "The fashion industry runs on many things," she continued, trailing her manicured fingers along my desk. "Creativity, timing, connections, but most importantly, information." She paused, examining her perfect nails. "I make it my business to know what potential competitors are developing." "Competitors implies we're in the same league," I couldn't resist saying. "We're not." Her eyes narrowed momentarily before she forced her smile back. Such confidence. But here's the situation. This stain-proof concept was actually something my team and I have been developing for quite some time. "That's a lie," I said flatly. "Is it?" She reached into her bag and withdrew a folder, dropping it on my desk with a crisp sound that cut through the suddenly silent studio. "Preliminary patent filings, date-stamped design concepts, material development timelines." I opened the folder, my fingers trembling slightly as I scanned documents that looked official, bearing the letterhead of Miller Designs and dates preceding my own research by months. "This is fabricated," I said, though my voice betrayed the first hint of uncertainty. Marcus finally looked up from his phone. "Legally, it appears quite solid," he drawled. "The Westfield legal team has reviewed everything." The subtext was clear. One of the largest fashion conglomerates in the world was backing Cassandra's claim. "You can't patent what you haven't created," I insisted, my pulse pounding in my ears. "Actually, you can," Marcus corrected. "It's called a provisional patent application. It protects the concept during development." He sighed as if bored by having to explain. "Look, this doesn't have to get messy." "What do you want?" I asked, cutting to the chase. Cassandra smiled, sensing weakness. "A partnership. You clearly have technical skills we could use. Your name would remain on the project in a supporting role." "Supporting role for my own creation?" I resisted the urge to laugh bitterly. "Our creation," she corrected smoothly. "Unless you want this to become a legal matter that could drag on for years." She leaned forward, the pungent smell of chemical dyes from our workshop mingling with her expensive perfume. "Years during which no one will touch your technology with a 10-foot pole because of pending litigation." The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Even if I eventually won, the delay would kill my business and the opportunity. By then, someone else would have developed something similar. I sensed movement and turned to see Elena and the rest of my small team hovering anxiously at the door. "Give us the room," I said quietly. When they reluctantly retreated, I turned back to Cassandra and Marcus. "And if I refuse?" Marcus stepped forward. "Then the Westfield Group files an injunction preventing you from continuing development or seeking investment while the matter is resolved in court." His tone suggested this was simply business, nothing personal, but the way Cassandra watched me, eyes gleaming with triumph, made it very personal indeed. "I'll need time to consider," I said, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. 24 hours, Cassandra replied. We're preparing for a major announcement regarding this technology at the Vanguard Fashion Summit next week. One way or another, we're moving forward. She collected her folder and turned to leave. At the door, she paused. Oh, and don't get any ideas about running to Elias Reeson. He's a minor player compared to Westfield. Smart investors know when to back away from potentially messy IP disputes. After they left, I sank into my chair, the vinyl squeaking beneath my weight. The studio remained silent, my team uncertain what had transpired, but sensing it wasn't good. Elena finally approached, her weathered hand coming to rest on my shoulder. What will you do? She asked quietly. I looked up at her, at the team that had believed in my vision, at the half-finished prototypes that represented months of work. Exactly what they expect, I replied. The next day, I issued a carefully worded press statement. In light of recent developments regarding overlapping innovation in textile technology, Immaculate will be temporarily suspending operations while we explore partnership opportunities within the industry. We thank our supporters for their understanding during this transition. Industry blogs picked up the story immediately, most framing it as another small designer being absorbed by a larger fashion house, a common enough occurrence to avoid raising eyebrows. Cassandra called within the hour, satisfaction evident in her voice. Smart decision. We'll send over the paperwork this afternoon. I'll have my lawyer review it, I replied flatly. Of course, but do hurry. We have production timelines to meet. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and pulled up the audio recording app. Since Cassandra's wine accident at the Fashion Week party, I'd been recording every interaction with her or anyone connected to her, including yesterday's studio visit. I forwarded the files to my lawyer along with copies of my dated research journals, material receipts, and development timelines, all stored in a secure location off-site after what happened 5 years ago. Is this enough? I asked when my lawyer called back after reviewing the materials. To definitively prove your prior development, it's strong, she confirmed. But fighting Westfield's legal team would be expensive and time-consuming, even with solid evidence. I'm not looking to fight them yet, I explained. I just need to secure my position while appearing to comply. Next, I reached out to several fashion industry bloggers I had cultivated relationships with, sharing just enough details about a potential legal dispute between an innovative small designer and a major fashion house to plant seeds of interest without naming names. Purely hypothetical, of course, I assured them. But interesting from an industry ethics perspective, don't you think? The third phase of my countermove was the most crucial. While publicly appearing to retreat, I spent the next 3 days visiting key fabric manufacturers, the same ones I knew Cassandra would need for large-scale production of any stain-resistant line. At each facility, I secured exclusive relationships with binding contracts, not for large orders they might refuse, but for specialized finishing processes that would be essential for any stain-resistant textile technology to work properly. The cool metal doorknobs of each factory office turned smoothly under my hand as I exited with signed agreements. By day 5, I had effectively created a supply chain blockade that would be invisible until Cassandra actually tried to move forward with production. Throughout this process, I maintained a defeated public persona. I even met with Cassandra and Marcus for coffee, nodding agreeably as they outlined how my contribution would be acknowledged in their grand innovation. You're taking this better than expected, Cassandra observed suspiciously as she stirred her latte, the silver spoon clinking rhythmically against fine china. I sighed, the picture of resignation. What choice do I have? You've won, again. It's not about winning, she lied smoothly. It's about creating the best possible product. Together. Of course, I murmured, dropping my gaze to appear suitably humbled. Marcus reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine in a gesture meant to seem comforting, but that made my skin crawl. You'll still be part of something revolutionary, he assured me, just not in the way you originally planned. I pulled my hand away, using the movement to reach for my purse. I should go. I have a meeting with my team to explain the new arrangement. Cassandra's smile was pure satisfaction. Give them my regards. Once safely around the corner, I ducked into a small boutique and texted Elena. Operation Understudy is in progress. Prepare phase 2. While publicly preparing to hand over my technology, I was quietly securing every advantage I could. The small team I trusted implicitly was now working from a secondary location, continuing development while maintaining the appearance of a business in the process of closure. That night, I received a text from an unfamiliar number. Delivery entrance, 10 minutes. I made my way to the service door at the back of my building. When I opened it, I found a young man in a courier uniform holding a large envelope. "From Mr. Reeson," he said simply before disappearing into the night. Inside were satellite images of a remote industrial facility in China, along with documentation showing recent large material orders placed by shell companies connected to Westfield Group. A note in Elias's handwriting read simply, "They've been developing something for months. Not your technology, but something they're planning to claim is equivalent. Thought you should know. E." I leaned against the cold brick wall, the rough texture grounding me as I processed this information. Cassandra and Marcus hadn't just stumbled upon my innovation. They'd been working on their own version, likely inferior but marketable with Westfield's resources. My announcement had accelerated their timeline. They weren't trying to steal my technology. They were trying to prevent me from revealing theirs was second-rate. I smiled for the first time in days. This wasn't just about bullying a smaller designer into submission. They were actually worried. And people who worry make mistakes. The next morning, I signed Cassandra's partnership agreement with one small modification my lawyer had insisted upon. A clause requiring complete technical documentation exchange before the partnership became official. "Just a formality," I assured Cassandra's lawyer on the phone, "since we'll be combining our research." When I emailed the signed document, Cassandra responded almost immediately. "Looking forward to our collaboration. We'll be announcing the partnership at next week's Vanguard Summit. Your attendance is expected." I replied with appropriate gratitude and anticipation. Then I forwarded Elias's intelligence to my lawyer with instructions. "Prepare injunction paperwork. Hold until my signal." The night before the Vanguard Summit, I couldn't sleep. The constant hum of the city outside my window provided a backdrop to my racing thoughts. Everything hinged on precise timing and Cassandra's predictable pattern of overconfidence. My phone chimed with a text from Elena. "It's done." Phase 2 was complete, the final piece of a countermove months in the making. While Cassandra thought I was preparing to transfer my technology to her, I had actually been perfecting it beyond what she could imagine, and tomorrow she would make her move, never realizing she was playing exactly the role I had crafted for her. I finally fell asleep as dawn broke, the first hints of sunlight filtering through my curtains, accompanied by the distant sounds of delivery trucks preparing for the day ahead. My dreams were filled with the satisfying crunch of gravel under designer heels, the sound of someone walking confidently into a trap of their own making. The Vanguard Fashion Summit was the industry's premier technology and innovation showcase. Held in a converted warehouse with soaring ceilings and industrial chic decor, it attracted designers, investors, and media figures interested in the future of fashion. I arrived deliberately late, slipping into the back of the main presentation hall just as Cassandra took the stage to thunderous applause. The lighting gave her an almost angelic glow as she smiled at the audience, radiant in her confidence. "Fashion has always been defined by beauty that demands care, luxury that requires maintenance," she began, her voice amplified throughout the space. "Today, Miller Designs, in partnership with the Westfield Group, is changing that paradigm forever." The screen behind her displayed the logo for a new line called Impervious, with the tagline, "Luxury Without Limits." My hands tightened around my program, crinkling the glossy paper. They'd barely bothered to differentiate the name from my immaculate brand. "Our revolutionary fabric technology repels liquids while maintaining the luxurious feel and drape of the finest textiles," Cassandra continued, her practice speech hitting all the key points my own launch would have emphasized. Models began walking onto the stage wearing white garments, while assistants dramatically poured colored liquids over them, coffee, wine, oil, all beating up and rolling off without leaving a mark. The audience gasped appreciatively at each demonstration. I had to admit their technology worked, at least in this controlled environment. Marcus Westfield joined Cassandra on stage, his arm sliding possessively around her waist. "This innovation represents years of development," he added, "and we're particularly excited to announce our newest team member, whose technical contributions have been invaluable." My cue. I felt dozens of heads turn in my direction as a spotlight suddenly found me in the back of the room. "Would you join us on stage?" Cassandra called, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I made my way forward, the hushed whispers of the audience following me like a wave. As I climbed the steps to the stage, I could smell the sharp chemical scent that confirmed my suspicions. Their fabric treatment was harsh, industrial-grade repellent, not the molecular bonding technology I had developed. "We're so pleased to welcome her expertise to the impervious team," Cassandra announced, beckoning me to stand beside her and Marcus. I took my place, smiling modestly as cameras flashed. The heat of the stage lights beat down on us, highlighting the sheen of Cassandra's revolutionary fabric, another telltale sign of its limitations. "Would you like to say a few words about joining forces with Miller Designs in Westfield?" Marcus prompted, handing me the microphone. This was the moment. My throat suddenly felt dry as I accepted the microphone, its weight substantial in my hand. "Thank you," I began softly. "Innovation in fashion has always been my passion." Cassandra nodded encouragingly, already turning slightly to reclaim the spotlight. "Which is why I'm so disappointed to see Miller Designs and Westfield Group presenting an inferior technology as groundbreaking." The words landed like a bomb. Cassandra froze mid-turn, her smile faltering. Marcus stepped forward as if to take the microphone, but I smoothly sidestepped him. "The impervious technology being demonstrated today uses conventional repellent treatments that will diminish after just 5 to 7 washings," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "It leaves a tactile residue, changes the drape of the fabric, and contains chemicals that can irritate sensitive skin." Murmurs rippled through the audience. A few journalists in the front row were frantically taking notes. "This is hardly the moment," Marcus began, reaching again for the microphone. I turned slightly away from him, addressing the audience directly. "I agreed to this partnership under false pretenses, after being presented with fabricated documentation claiming Miller Designs had developed this technology first." I nodded to the back of the room where Elena had slipped in alongside my lawyer. On cue, they began distributing flash drives to key media figures. Those contain recorded conversations documenting the attempted appropriation of my actual innovation, Immaculate, which uses a molecular bonding process that permanently alters the fabric without changing its natural properties. Cassandra lunged for the microphone, her composure completely shattered. "She's lying! Security!" But it was too late. The room had erupted into chaos, with journalists shouting questions and investors murmuring among themselves. The squeaking of Cassandra's designer heels against the polished stage floor was barely audible over the commotion. I stepped back as security approached, looking appropriately confused and innocent. "I'm simply clarifying the nature of our partnership," I said loudly enough for nearby journalists to hear. "Isn't transparency what this summit is about?" By the time Cassandra and Marcus managed to regain control of the room, the damage was done. Half the audience was scrolling through the documentation I'd provided, and representatives from the summit's ethics committee were making their way toward the stage. I slipped away during the confusion, making my exit through a side door where Elias Reeson was waiting, a slight smile on his normally impassive face. "Perfectly executed," he commented as we walked briskly toward the exit, though perhaps with more drama than strictly necessary. "The fashion industry respects bold moves," I replied, my heart still racing from the confrontation. "Indeed." He checked his watch. "The injunction should be filed within the hour, preventing them from proceeding with their launch while the IP dispute is investigated." Outside, the bright afternoon sun momentarily blinded me, its warmth a stark contrast to the air-conditioned tension of the summit. I took a deep breath, catching the scent of street vendor pretzels mingling with city exhaust. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," Elias said, opening the door to his waiting car. "We launch Immaculate properly, as the authentic innovation it is." As we pulled away from the curb, my phone exploded with notifications, mostly media requests for comment, but one text from Cassandra stood out. "You have no idea what you've just done. This isn't over." I switched off my phone and leaned back against the leather seat, allowing myself a moment of satisfaction. She was right about one thing. This wasn't over. But for the first time since she'd betrayed me 5 years ago, I was the one in control. The real war was just beginning. 1 month after the Vanguard Summit debacle, Immaculate was gaining momentum. Early prototype showings to select buyers had generated substantial pre-orders, and manufacturing partnerships were solidifying. The injunction against Cassandra and Westfield's impervious line remained in place while the intellectual property dispute was investigated. I should have known the calm wouldn't last. The call came from Bloomfield's, one of the most prestigious department stores in the country and our largest potential retail partner. Their chief buyer's voice was apologetic but firm. "We're going to have to put our order on hold," she explained. "There are some concerning reports about the safety of your fabric technology." "Safety issues?" I repeated, disbelief coloring my tone. "What specifically?" "The chemical composition. We've received documentation suggesting prolonged skin contact could cause irritation, possibly even long-term health effects." She paused. "I'm sure you understand we can't take risks with consumer safety. Once you've addressed these concerns and provided third-party certification, we can revisit our arrangement." The line went dead before I could respond. I sat frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear, as the acrid scent of burning career opportunities filled my nostrils. Not literal smoke, but the unmistakable sensation of watching something you've built go up in flames. By afternoon, 3 more retailers had called with similar concerns. By evening, fashion blogs were running headlines asking if Immaculate was fashion's next health scandal. I called an emergency meeting with my team and our lawyers. Elena arrived first, her usual calm demeanor shaken. "This makes no sense," she insisted, spreading printouts of the safety reports across my desk. "Our formulation uses modified silk proteins and natural enzymes. There are no toxic components." My lawyer nodded in agreement after reviewing our documentation. "These claims are completely fabricated. The report they're circulating cites chemicals that aren't even in your formula." "Cassandra," I whispered, the name itself leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. "But how would she know enough about our process to fabricate a credible-sounding report?" asked one of my junior designers. The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Someone close to our operation was feeding her information. Not complete or accurate, but enough to cause damage. "We need to get ahead of this," my lawyer advised. "Issue a statement refuting the claims and fast-track independent safety certification." "That will take weeks," I countered, fury building in my chest. "By then, the damage will be done." "It's already being done," Elena said quietly, turning her tablet toward me. On the screen was a video of Cassandra looking appropriately concerned as she spoke to a reporter. While I can't comment specifically on ongoing legal matters, consumer safety is our top priority at Miller Designs. If these reports about Immaculate are accurate, I would urge my colleague to prioritize transparency over expediency. The perfect knife twist, presenting herself as the concerned industry professional while simultaneously driving the blade deeper into my company's reputation. "She's making herself look like the responsible one," I growled, pacing the room. "When her own impervious technology uses industrial fluoropolymers that literally never break down in the environment?" "We know that, but the public doesn't," my lawyer reminded me, "and Westfield's resources can keep that information suppressed while amplifying these false claims about your product." I stopped pacing abruptly. "So we fight resources with resources." Elias Reeson agreed to meet me for dinner at an upscale restaurant where the ambient noise would make electronic surveillance difficult. The warm glow of candlelight softened his usually stern features as I explained the situation. "Not unexpected," he commented, sipping his wine. "Predictable, even." "You anticipated this?" I asked, surprised. "Cassandra Miller has a pattern. When she can't win fairly, she poisons the well." He set down his glass with precision. "She did the same to another designer 2 years ago, Julian Cole. Promising career destroyed by leaked documentation claiming he used child labor for his accessories line. Was it true? Entirely fabricated, but by the time he proved it, no one cared anymore. Fashion moved on." Elias studied me. "You won't have that problem." "Because I have you," I guessed. "Because you anticipated this move," he corrected. "The question is, what's your countermove?" Before I could answer, a familiar cologne wafted toward our table, followed by Marcus Westfield himself. The restaurant's subtle background music suddenly seemed muted as he approached, his smile practiced and predatory. "What a pleasant surprise," he drawled, placing a hand on the back of my chair. the weight of it pressed against my spine, an unwelcome intrusion. Mind if I join you for a moment? Without waiting for an answer, he pulled up a chair, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. Elias Reeson, he acknowledged with a nod. Unusual company you're keeping these days. Marcus, Elias replied coolly, still letting Cassandra make your strategic decisions? Marcus's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Cassandra is a visionary. I simply provide the infrastructure for her brilliance. He turned to me. Speaking of which, I heard about your recent difficulties. Concerning safety reports can be so damaging to a new brand. Especially fabricated ones, I replied evenly. He shrugged, the motion causing his designer jacket to catch the light. Consumers are so fickle with their trust. Once lost, almost impossible to regain. His gaze locked with mine. However, there may be a solution that benefits everyone. I'm listening, I said, though every instinct screamed to tell him to leave. Westfield could acquire Immaculate, the brand, the technology, everything. We'd handle the safety certification process, leverage our relationships to rebuild retailer confidence. His fingers drummed lightly on the table's surface. You'd receive fair compensation, of course, and a consulting role during transition. The subtext was clear. Surrender now or we'll destroy you completely. I managed a smile. That's certainly an interesting proposition. The offer stands for 48 hours, he said, rising from the table. After that, well, he gestured vaguely. The news cycle moves quickly. Hard to say what might break next. As he walked away, his cologne lingered, now making my stomach churn with its cloying intensity. That was a threat, I stated, once he was out of earshot. That was desperation, Elias corrected, looking thoughtful. They're afraid of something. Of my technology making theirs obsolete? Perhaps, he paused, or perhaps something else entirely. After dinner, I returned to my studio to find it eerily quiet. The usual hum of activity had been replaced by a tense silence as my team awaited direction. I could feel their doubt, their fear that everything we'd built was about to collapse. I gathered them together, the familiar scent of fabric and dye providing a small comfort in the midst of chaos. They think they've won, I began, looking at each team member in turn. They believe we'll either surrender or spend months fighting these false safety claims while our momentum dies and our funding dries up. Elena nodded grimly. It's what happened to Julian Cole. We're not Julian Cole, I replied firmly, and we're not fighting on their terms. I outlined my plan, a risky counteroffensive that would require perfect execution and absolute loyalty from everyone involved. If anyone isn't comfortable with this approach, speak now, I concluded. No judgment, no questions asked. The room remained silent, determination replacing doubt in my team's expressions. Then let's get to work. Over the next week, while publicly appearing to struggle against the safety allegations, we executed a carefully choreographed strategy behind the scenes. Independent labs were testing our fabric, but those results would take time. We needed something more immediate. Late one evening, I received a text from my source inside Cassandra's operation, a pattern maker who had once worked for me before being poached with promises of higher pay and better opportunities. See meeting with lab technician tonight. Private room at Ver, 10 p.m. I was already in motion, grabbing my coat and a small recording device designed to look like a compact mirror. The night air was crisp against my face as I hurried down the street, determination fueling each step. Vera was an exclusive lounge known for its private meeting rooms and discretion. I slipped the hostess an envelope containing several $100 bills and a fabricated story about surprising my boyfriend who was meeting a client. Room 3, she whispered after a moment's hesitation. But I never told you that. I positioned myself in the service corridor outside room 3, the recording device activated. Through the door, I could hear the murmur of voices, Cassandra's distinctive tone unmistakable even when hushed. Need more than vague implications, she was saying. The certification board is asking questions. I've done everything you asked, a male voice replied, tension evident in his clipped words. Falsified data can only go so far before someone notices the discrepancies. Then make them less obvious, Cassandra snapped. You're being paid well enough to be creative. Do you understand what you're asking? If this gets traced back to me, my career is over. I could face criminal charges for falsifying safety reports. If you had concerns about legality, you should have raised them before accepting payment. Marcus's voice interjected smoothly. Besides, it's hardly the first time you've adjusted results for the right price. The sound of hushed voices echoed in the empty corridor as I recorded their conversation, my heart pounding so loudly I feared they might hear it through the door. Uh, Double the final payment, the lab technician finally said. And after this, we're done. Permanently. Of course, Cassandra agreed, her tone suggesting the opposite. Just make sure the review board receives the updated safety concerns by Friday. I slipped away before they emerged, the recording device clutched tightly in my hand. This was the evidence we needed, proof of deliberate falsification of safety data, but I didn't release it immediately. Strategic timing would be essential. The next day, I did something unexpected. I announced Immaculate was temporarily suspending operations pending a complete safety review. While we are confident in our technology, my press statement read, we take consumer safety with the utmost seriousness and will not proceed until independent certification is complete. Industry blogs exploded with speculation, most assuming this was an admission of guilt or at least serious problems. Cassandra was quoted looking appropriately vindicated. Responsibility to consumers must always come first, even when it's difficult. Behind this apparent defeat, however, we were executing the next phase of our strategy. While Immaculate appeared dormant, I was meeting with an entirely different set of contacts, ethical manufacturing certification boards, and textile safety experts with long-standing reputations for integrity. In a small conference room that smelled of stale coffee and printer toner, I laid out our actual safety documentation, manufacturing processes, and third-party test results. What you're describing isn't just safe, commented Dr. Rivera, a leading textile safety researcher, as she reviewed our materials. It's potentially revolutionary for reducing chemical exposure in fashion. The natural enzyme binding process eliminates the need for traditional chemical treatments altogether. That's exactly the point, I explained, the bitter taste of boardroom coffee lingering as I spoke. Immaculate isn't just stain-proof. It's a fundamentally different approach to textile treatment. By week's end, we had assembled a comprehensive safety dossier endorsed by 3 independent research institutions. Rather than simply defending against Cassandra's accusations, we were positioning Immaculate as a breakthrough in textile safety. The final phase came when leaked documents mysteriously appeared in several journalists' inboxes, evidence of the Westfield Group's own problematic chemical usage in their standard product lines, along with the recorded conversation proving deliberate falsification of safety reports against Immaculate. I never confirmed being the source of the leak, but industry insiders knew. The timing was too perfect, the counterpunch too precisely aimed. While Cassandra and Marcus scrambled to contain their own emerging scandal, I was invited to present Immaculate's technology at the Global Textile Safety Conference, a prestigious platform that transformed the narrative overnight from potential health risk to groundbreaking advancement in non-toxic fashion. The evening after my presentation, which received a standing ovation from the gathered experts, I returned to my hotel room exhausted but triumphant. The light on my phone blinked with dozens of notifications, retailers wanting to reinstate orders, journalists requesting interviews, and investors inquiring about participation in our next funding round. And one message from an unknown number: "This isn't over. See." I deleted it without responding, too tired to feel anything but a dull satisfaction. She was right, of course, it wasn't over. But for now, I had weathered her worst attack and emerged stronger. As I was preparing for bed, my phone rang, Elias Reeson's number lighting up the screen. "Impressive recovery," he said without preamble when I answered, though perhaps unnecessarily theatrical. "The fashion industry respects drama," I replied, sinking onto the edge of the bed, "especially when it's backed by substance." "Indeed," he paused. "There's something you should know. Marcus Westfield has been making inquiries about your background, your family specifically." My blood ran cold. "What kind of inquiries?" "The kind that suggest he's looking for leverage," Elias said carefully. "Or perhaps just trying to understand who he's dealing with more completely." I closed my eyes, the hotel room suddenly feeling much smaller. There's nothing to find. Everyone has something, even if it's just context. His tone softened slightly. Whatever it is, you might want to address it before they discover it independently. After we hung up, I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights blinking in the darkness. The truth was, there was something to find. Something I'd walked away from years ago that could change everything about how the industry perceived me. My finger hovered over a contact I hadn't called in nearly 7 years. The name Mother seemed alien on my screen, a relic from another life I'd deliberately left behind. Before I could reconsider, I pressed call, my heart racing as the phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Alexandra Reynolds' office, answered a crisp, professional voice I didn't recognize. This is her daughter, I said, the words feeling strange in my mouth. I need to speak with her. The silence on the other end lasted just a beat too long. One moment, please. As I waited, I caught my reflection in the window glass. Determined, successful, but still carrying the weight of a decision made years ago to reject privilege and prove myself on my own terms. This is unexpected, came my mother's voice finally, neither warm nor cold, simply factual. We need to talk, I replied. In person. About your little fashion line? The faint note of dismissal in her tone was achingly familiar. About Cassandra Miller and Marcus Westfield, I corrected. They're looking into our family, and I'd rather you hear from me first why that matters. Another pause, longer this time. The Peninsula, breakfast 8 a.m. tomorrow. She hung up without waiting for confirmation. I set down the phone, a mixture of dread and resolve settling in my stomach. Tomorrow, I would face a past I'd been running from, a heritage and legacy far beyond the fashion world's imagination. For now, I needed rest. Tomorrow would require a different kind of strength, facing an adversary far more formidable than Cassandra Miller, the truth of who I really was. The Peninsula Hotel's breakfast room embodied old-world luxury. Crystal chandeliers catching the morning light, silverware gleaming on immaculate tablecloths, the gentle clink of fine china providing a soothing backdrop to hushed conversations. The scent of freshly baked pastries mingled with the rich aroma of gourmet coffee, creating an atmosphere of refined comfort. I arrived 10 minutes early, but Alexandra Reynolds was already there, commanding the best table with the casual entitlement of someone accustomed to the world arranging itself according to her preferences. My mother hadn't changed much in 7 years, still impeccably styled in what appeared to be a custom Chanel suit, her silver-streaked dark hair cut in a severe bob that emphasized her sharp cheekbones. She didn't stand when I approached, merely indicated the chair across from her with a slight nod. You're looking well, she observed as I sat down, her eyes conducting a rapid assessment. Though that jacket is at least 2 seasons old. It's vintage, I replied, though we both knew it wasn't. Of course! She signaled to a waiter who materialized instantly. The usual for me, and she glanced at me expectantly. Just coffee, Black, I said, my appetite having disappeared entirely. When the waiter departed, she folded her hands on the table, the substantial diamond on her right hand catching the light. So, Marcus Westfield is investigating our family. Why? Because I'm becoming a problem for him and Cassandra Miller, I explained, keeping my voice low despite the privacy offered by surrounding empty tables. They tried to steal my technology, then to discredit it, and failed at both. And now they're looking for personal leverage, she concluded with a slight nod. Did you ever disclose your connection to Reynolds Textile Global? No. A hint of a smile crossed her face. So they have no idea they're attacking the heiress to one of the largest textile conglomerates in the world. I'm not an heiress, I corrected automatically. I walked away, remember? You rejected an executive position, she clarified, her voice cooling several degrees. Family is not something one simply walks away from. The waiter returned with our order, providing a momentary reprieve from her piercing gaze. I wrapped my fingers around the coffee cup, its warmth grounding me. Why did you really leave? She asked after the waiter had gone, the question hanging between us like a challenge. I met her eyes directly. Because I wanted to succeed or fail on my own merits, not as Alexandra Reynolds' daughter. And have you succeeded? Her tone suggested she already knew the answer. I was getting there, I admitted, until Cassandra Miller interfered. My mother sipped her tea thoughtfully, the delicate porcelain cup looking almost fragile in her manicured hands. The same Cassandra Miller who received the Emerging Designer grant from the Reynolds Foundation 3 years ago? I stiffened. You funded her? The foundation funds many promising designers. I don't personally select them. She set down her cup with precision, though I recall her being quite charming at the gala. Of course, Cassandra had charmed her way into Reynolds funding. I wondered if she had any idea of my connection when she did it, or if it was just another ironic twist in our intertwined paths. What exactly do you want from me? My mother asked, cutting to the heart of the matter with characteristic directness. Nothing, I replied instinctively, then reconsidered. No, that's not true. I want to know if you'll remain neutral when they come asking questions. Neutral, she repeated, as if testing an unfamiliar word. You're asking if I'll pretend not to know you when Marcus Westfield inevitably contacts me? Yes. She studied me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, to my surprise, she laughed. A short, genuine sound I'd rarely heard growing up. You truly are my daughter, she said, something like respect flickering in her eyes. Asking me to conspire in your little revenge drama against the very designer our foundation supported. It's not about revenge, I insisted, though the lie tasted bitter. It's about protecting my innovation. Innovation, she echoed, leaning forward slightly. Tell me about this miraculous stain-proof fabric technology you've developed. I hesitated, years of keeping my distance making me reluctant to share. But strategic necessity overrode old habits, and I found myself explaining the fundamentals of Immaculate's approach, the enzyme bonding process, the maintenance of natural fabric properties, the elimination of harsh chemicals. As I spoke, I watched her expression shift from polite interest to genuine engagement. My mother had been born into the textile business. Before becoming CEO, she had worked in every department, including research and development. She understood the technical aspects in a way few fashion executives could. You developed this yourself? She asked when I finished, not bothering to hide her surprise. With a small team, I acknowledged. But yes, the core technology is mine. She was silent for a moment, absently turning her diamond ring as she processed what I'd shared. The clicking of her designer heels against the marble floor beneath the table betrayed her excitement, a tell I remembered from childhood. It's not just stain resistance, she finally said. What you're describing would revolutionize textile treatment across multiple industries. Medical applications alone would be substantial. I'm aware, I replied, but fashion is my focus for now. A needlessly limiting approach, she countered, reverting to her critical default. But I suppose it makes a statement. The breakfast around us continued in elegant precision. Waiters gliding between tables, the soft murmur of business discussions, the occasional clink of silverware against fine china. We existed in our own bubble of tension and reluctant connection. I'll remain neutral for now, she finally declared, dabbing her lips with a monogram napkin. Not because you've asked, but because I'm curious to see how this plays out. She fixed me with a penetrating look. However, we should discuss a more formal arrangement for the future. What kind of arrangement? Reynolds Textile has resources that could accelerate your technology's development and deployment. Research facilities, manufacturing capabilities, global distribution networks. She gestured dismissively. Things you're currently cobbling together with whatever limited backing you've secured? The offer dangled before me, tempting, practical, and completely contrary to everything I'd been working toward. I left because I didn't want to be handed success, I reminded her. And you've proven your point, she replied smoothly. You've developed something valuable entirely on your own. Now be practical about scaling it. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Urgent, call immediately. I need to go, I said, already rising from my chair. My mother nodded, unperturbed. We'll continue this discussion another time. And she hesitated, an unusual moment of uncertainty crossing her features. Your grandmother has been asking about you? She follows your work, you know. This stopped me short. Grandma Ellie knows about Immaculate? She keeps a file, my mother confirmed with the faintest smile. Says you remind her of herself before she married into the Reynolds family. I absorbed this unexpected information, memories of my grandmother's encouraging presence flooding back. the only person in the family who had seemed to understand my need to forge my own path. Tell her I'll call her, I found myself saying. Do that. My mother rose gracefully, signaling the end of our meeting. And consider what I've said about resources. Pride makes a poor business partner. As she walked away, her Louboutins clicking authoritatively across the marble floor, I felt the weight of my past and future colliding in ways I hadn't anticipated when I'd walked away 7 years ago. Outside the hotel, I called Elena immediately. What's the emergency? I asked without preamble. Not over the phone, she replied, her voice tight with tension. Meet me at the secondary workshop. 30 minutes later, I arrived at our backup location, a converted industrial space in an unfashionable part of town where we had moved our most critical operations after Cassandra's safety allegations. Eliana was waiting, along with our head of security, a recent hire named James whose background in corporate intelligence had proved invaluable during recent events. Someone tried to access our server last night, Elena explained, leading me to a computer terminal. Sophisticated attack, targeted specifically at our technical documentation and patent filings. Did they get anything? I asked, scanning the security logs James had pulled up. No, he confirmed. Our safeguards held, but they'll try again with better tools. Cassandra? James shook his head. Too technical for her usual approach. This has Westfield's resources behind it. They're getting desperate, I noted, feeling a grim satisfaction despite the escalation. There's more, Elena said hesitantly. While tracking the intrusion attempt, we found something strange. She glanced at James, who nodded encouragingly. Multiple shell companies making significant purchases of our early-stage prototypes through different retail channels. They're buying samples for reverse engineering, I concluded. Yes, but... Elena exchanged another look with James. The shell companies don't trace back to Westfield or Miller Designs. Then who? Reynolds Textile Global, James said quietly. Specifically, their advanced materials division. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My mother had been investigating my technology even while we were estranged, perhaps for years. How long? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The purchases date back 18 months, James replied. Systematic acquisition of anything publicly available about Immaculate. My mind raced through implications. Had my mother known about my technology before our breakfast meeting? Had she been monitoring my work all along while maintaining our estrangement? The thought left me feeling exposed, as if the independence I'd believed I'd earned was just another illusion. There's one more thing, Elena added gently, holding out a weathered fabric sample book I immediately recognized. Where did you get this? I asked, taking it with trembling fingers. The leather cover was worn smooth by years of handling, the pages inside filled with rare textile samples I had studied obsessively as a child while sitting in my grandmother's lap. It was delivered yesterday, Elena explained, by courier with this note. The card was simple cream stationery, the handwriting unmistakably my grandmother's elegant script. For inspiration, as always, some patterns are worth revisiting. Grandma Ellie. My fingers traced the embossed Reynolds family crest on the book's cover, memories flooding back of hours spent in my grandmother's private textile library, learning about fibers and weaves long before I could fully understand their significance. She's been sending these, I realized aloud. The fabric samples that arrived anonymously over the years, they were from her... Elena nodded. The courier confirmed he's been delivering packages from Mrs. Eleanor Reynolds to you for the past 5 years, always with instructions to never reveal the sender. My grandmother had never lost faith in me, had been silently supporting and guiding my work, even while respecting my need for independence. I opened the sample book to find something unexpected tucked between the pages. Stock certificates and legal documents, the embossed seal catching the light as I lifted them for closer inspection. These are ownership shares in Reynolds Textile, I said, scanning the documentation. Significant ownership. James moved to examine them over my shoulder. 40% of the company, according to these certificates. In your name, held in trust by Eleanor Reynolds. That's impossible, I whispered. My mother controls the company. Your mother is CEO, James corrected gently. But according to these documents, your grandmother has been quietly transferring ownership shares to you for years, through a series of trusts and holding companies. The implications were staggering. I hadn't just walked away from an executive position 7 years ago. I'd walked away from what would eventually be controlling interest in one of the world's largest textile conglomerates. And now that heritage was being handed back to me at precisely the moment I needed leverage against Cassandra and Marcus. My phone rang, an unknown number that I nevertheless instantly recognized from its pattern as my grandmother's private line. "Grandma Ellie," I answered, emotion thickening my voice. "You received my package," she stated rather than asked, her voice as crisp and authoritative at 82 as it had been in my childhood. "Good, it's time we talk strategy." "Strategy," I echoed. "For dealing with this Miller woman and the Westfield boy," she replied matter-of-factly. "I've been following the situation. Quite entertaining, but now it's time to finish it properly." "You've been following my work?" She made a dismissive sound. "Of course I have. Did you think I'd let my only granddaughter struggle unnecessarily? I respected your need to prove yourself, but I wasn't about to leave you entirely unprotected." The realization that I had never been truly alone, that my grandmother had been watching over me while allowing me the independence I craved, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "The package explains your current position," she continued briskly. 40% ownership of Reynolds Textile. With proxies, I'm prepared to sign over, giving you effective control of an additional 11%. Your mother knows nothing about this yet, though she's suspected for some time that I've been planning something. "Why now?" I managed to ask. "Because you've proven yourself," she answered simply, "not just with your technology, which is brilliant, but with how you've handled adversity. You've shown yourself worthy of the Reynolds legacy, not by accepting it as your birthright, but by earning it through your own merit." The words I'd longed to hear without realizing it. Not from my critical mother, but from the grandmother who had always seen my potential. "There's a board meeting next week," she continued. "I've arranged for you to attend. It's time to consolidate your position before dealing with these fashion world upstarts." After we hung up, I remained motionless, the fabric sample book in one hand and ownership certificates in the other. Bridges between my past and future that I had never expected to cross. Elena and James waited patiently, understanding that something momentous had shifted. "What does this mean for Immaculate?" Elena finally asked. I looked up, a new clarity settling over me. "It means we're not just launching a stain-proof fashion line," I replied. "We're about to change the entire industry, with the full resources of Reynolds Textile behind us." The weight of this realization should have been oppressive, the responsibility of a global company suddenly within my grasp. But instead, I felt lightness, as if pieces of myself long kept separate were finally coming together. That evening, in my apartment, I pulled out my original notebook, the one I had hidden from Cassandra when she first began threatening Immaculate. My fingers trembled as I traced the early sketches and formulations, remembering the isolation and determination that had fueled those long nights of development. I had believed I was creating something new, something entirely my own. But looking at those pages now, I recognized influences from my childhood in my grandmother's textile library. Approaches and techniques absorbed before I had the vocabulary to name them. What I had thought was rebellion had actually been inheritance, a legacy expressed through my own unique vision. My phone chimed with a calendar reminder: International Patent Office, final review, tomorrow 9 a.m. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Tomorrow, Immaculate's core technology would receive its international patent protection, coinciding with the validation report from the Textile Innovation Institute confirming our approach as both revolutionary and completely safe. All the pieces were falling into place, not just for revenge against Cassandra, but for something far more significant. I remembered her words from 5 years ago as security escorted me from the fashion show, where she had claimed my designs as her own. "The strong survive in this business. You were never strong enough." She had been wrong. I wasn't just surviving. I was about to transform the very industry she had used to try to destroy me. With that thought warming me, I finally slept, deeply and dreamlessly for the first time in years, the weathered fabric sample book from my grandmother resting on my nightstand, its familiar scent of jasmine perfume filling the room as I drifted off. The Victoria Bishop Fashion Exhibition represented the pinnacle of industry prestige, Invitation only, covered by every major fashion publication, attended by buyers and influencers whose approval could make or break designers. Held in a renovated historic armory building, its soaring ceilings and dramatic lighting created the perfect backdrop for fashion's most important showcases. I stood in the crowded main hall, deliberately positioned to observe Cassandra's arrival. After the safety allegations debacle, she had been uncharacteristically quiet for weeks, no doubt planning her next move while I prepared mine. The exhibition's opening night carried the distinctive scent of anticipation, perfume mingling with champagne, and the slightly dusty smell of the historic venue, creating an atmosphere thick with possibility and pretension. "She's here," Elena murmured beside me, subtly indicating the main entrance where Cassandra was making her entrance, Marcus Westfield at her side like an expensive accessory. They moved through the crowd with practiced confidence, accepting air kisses and dispensing calculated charm. Cassandra wore white, a calculated choice for the designer about to showcase a stain-proof fashion line. Her dress shimmered under the exhibition lights, the fabric catching and reflecting with each step. The squeaking of her designer heels against the polished floor created a rhythmic counterpoint to the ambient music as she approached the central runway where her collection would be featured in the evening's headline showcase. "Nervous?" Elena asked, noting my intense focus. "Not anymore," I replied truthfully. We had arrived early to ensure everything was in place. My lawyer was present, along with representatives from the International Patent Office and the Textile Safety Certification Board, all positioned strategically throughout the venue, unnoticed but ready. "Your mother just arrived," Elena noted, glancing toward the VIP entrance. I turned to see Alexandra Reynolds making her characteristic poised entrance, commanding attention without seeming to seek it. But it was the woman beside her who caught my breath. My grandmother, Eleanor Reynolds, attending her first public fashion event in nearly a decade. Even at 82, Grandma Ellie carried herself with the subtle authority that had made her legendary in the textile industry. Her silver hair was elegantly coiffed, her outfit impeccably tailored but deliberately understated, power that didn't need to announce itself. The significance of her presence wasn't lost on the industry veterans who immediately began murmuring among themselves. Eleanor Reynolds didn't attend fashion events unless something significant was happening. "They're coming this way," Elena whispered unnecessarily. I straightened as my mother and grandmother approached, the familiar scent of my grandmother's exclusive jasmine perfume reaching me before they did. "Quite the production you've arranged," my mother commented by way of greeting, her eyes scanning the room with professional assessment. "I assume everything is in place?" "Yes," I confirmed, surprised by her business-like support. "Thank you for coming." "Wouldn't miss it," she replied with the ghost of a smile. "The Reynolds women have always enjoyed a good strategic coup." My grandmother stepped forward, taking my hands in hers. The familiar texture of her skin, soft yet somehow resilient, brought back a flood of childhood memories. "You've done well," she said simply, her eyes bright with pride and something like mischief, though perhaps with more drama than strictly necessary. "I learned from the best," I replied, squeezing her hands gently. "Indeed you did." She glanced toward where Cassandra was holding court with fashion editors. "That one has no idea what's about to hit her, does she?" "None whatsoever." A small smile played at the corner of my grandmother's mouth. "Good. The element of surprise is crucial in both warfare and business." She patted my hand. "We'll take our seats now. The Reynolds presence has been noted. Let them wonder why we're here until the moment of revelation." As they moved toward the VIP section, I noticed industry figures bowing respectfully toward them, the ripple effect of their presence spreading throughout the room. Even those too young to fully understand Eleanor Reynolds' significance could sense the power she carried effortlessly. Marcus Westfield had noticed too. I watched his expression shift from confidence to calculation as he registered my mother and grandmother's arrival. He leaned toward Cassandra, whispering something urgent in her ear. Her head snapped up, eyes scanning until she found my grandmother, then my mother, and finally landing on me with dawning suspicion. "She's connecting the dots," Elena observed. "Too late," I replied, checking my watch. "It's almost time." The exhibition director appeared on the central runway, microphone in hand, calling for attention. The crowd gradually quietened, champagne glasses stilling as the evening's showcase was about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Victoria Bishop Fashion Exhibition's headline presentation. Tonight, we're honored to feature the world premiere of an innovative collection that promises to revolutionize luxury fashion. Cassandra moved to the side of the runway, ready for her triumphant entrance after the introduction. Please welcome to the runway the groundbreaking Impervious collection by Miller Designs in partnership with the Westfield Group. Applause rippled through the crowd as Cassandra took the stage, confidence personified in her white dress that caught the light with each practiced movement. "Thank you," she purred into the microphone, her voice carrying effortlessly through the space. Fashion has always been defined by beauty that demands care, luxury that requires caution. Tonight, we change that paradigm forever. On cue, models began emerging onto the runway wearing pristine white garments, dresses, suits, evening wear, all featuring the same distinctive shimmer that suggested technological innovation beneath the beauty. Impervious represents years of groundbreaking research, Cassandra continued, gesturing toward the models now arranged in a striking tableau. Every piece you see tonight incorporates our patented technology that repels liquids while maintaining the luxurious feel expected from high fashion. Assistants appeared carrying trays with wine glasses and coffee cups. The demonstration was about to begin, the dramatic moment when liquids would be poured over white garments, only to roll off harmlessly. Before we proceed, Cassandra added, her smile radiant with anticipation, I'd like to acknowledge our partnership with the Westfield Group, whose vision and resources have made this innovation possible. Marcus joined her on stage, his practiced smile suggesting the benefactor who made dreams reality. The perfect power couple, about to cement their dominance in fashion innovation. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. "Excuse me." A voice cut through the anticipation. My lawyer, William Chen, had stepped forward, a document case in hand. "I'm afraid there's a matter that needs addressing before this demonstration proceeds." Cassandra's smile faltered slightly. "This is hardly the time for—" "This is exactly the time," William replied, his voice carrying professionally across the now silent room. "I represent Immaculate Technologies and its founder, who holds the international patent for the stain-resistant technology you're attempting to showcase." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Cameras that had been focused on the models swung toward this unexpected interruption. Additionally, came another voice from the opposite side of the runway. Dr. Rivera from the Textile Safety Certification Board stepped forward. "We have evidence that Miller Designs knowingly falsified safety reports regarding a competitor's technology while attempting to rush an inferior version to market." The murmurs grew louder. Cassandra's expression shifted from confusion to anger. "This is outrageous," Marcus interjected, moving to the microphone. "These accusations are completely unfounded and inappropriate." "Actually," my lawyer continued, opening his document case and withdrawing official-looking papers, "they're thoroughly documented. The International Patent Office confirmed final approval this morning for my client's molecular bonding process. The same process apparently being used in your Impervious line, despite your knowledge of the pending patent." Gasps rippled through the crowd as William handed copies of the patent documentation to nearby journalists. The flashbulbs began in earnest, capturing Cassandra's increasingly panicked expression. "Furthermore," Dr. Rivera added, "we have evidence that Miller Designs commissioned falsified safety reports against Immaculate Technology while attempting to rush their own inferior version to market." It was my cue. I stepped forward, moving deliberately through the crowd that parted instinctively before me. "Perhaps we should clarify exactly what technology is being presented tonight," I suggested, my voice steady as I approached the runway. Cassandra's eyes locked with mine, blazing with a mixture of fury and the first flickers of fear. "This is a private showcase," she hissed, though the microphone caught every word. "Security!" "I believe my family and I were invited," I replied calmly, gesturing toward where my mother and grandmother sat watching the proceedings with regal composure. The mention of my family confused her momentarily, but Marcus's expression changed to one of dawning horror as he finally made the connection. "Reynolds," he muttered, audible through the microphone he still held. "You're a Reynolds." The revelation sent another wave of murmurs through the audience. Fashion journalists were frantically typing on their phones, the story evolving from showcase to scandal in real time. Perhaps we should compare the technologies directly, I suggested, maintaining an air of professional concern, to ensure the audience understands the distinction between true innovation and imitation. Before Cassandra could object, my team had wheeled out a rack of white garments, immaculate prototypes, each bearing my label. Elena handed me a glass of red wine. The impervious technology being demonstrated tonight uses conventional chemical repellents that will degrade after just a few washings, leaving harmful residues both on the garment and potentially on the wearer's skin, I explained, addressing the audience directly. Immaculate, by contrast, uses a molecular bonding process that permanently alters the fabric structure without chemical treatments. I poured wine directly onto the white dress I was wearing, a dramatic gesture that caused audible gasps as the deep red liquid splashed across the fabric. But instead of ruining the garment, the wine beaded on the surface, rolling off without leaving a trace. Servers I had positioned throughout the venue now moved among the audience with immaculate fabric samples and various liquids, allowing guests to test the technology themselves. The excited exclamations and impressed nods told me everything I needed to know. The demonstration was working. Additionally, I continued, independent laboratory testing confirms immaculate technology is completely non-toxic and environmentally sustainable, unlike the formulation used in the impervious line, which contains PFAS chemicals currently being banned in several countries. Cassandra lunged for the microphone, her composure completely shattered. "She's lying! This is industrial sabotage!" "Actually," came my grandmother's voice, clear and authoritative as she rose from her seat, "every statement is supported by documentation from the International Textile Safety Board, the Patent Office, and Reynolds Textile Global's Advanced Materials Division." The mention of Reynolds Textile, one of the most powerful forces in the global fabric industry, sent a hush through the crowd, followed by an explosion of whispers. Eleanor Reynolds rarely spoke publicly anymore. When she did, the industry listened. "What's more," she continued, her voice carrying effortlessly despite her age, "we have evidence that Miller Designs attempted to steal proprietary technology from my granddaughter's company while simultaneously spreading false safety concerns." The strategic use of "my granddaughter" wasn't lost on anyone in the room. The connection was now explicit. I wasn't just any designer, but the heir to the Reynolds textile empire. Chaos erupted. Journalists shouted questions, photographers' flashes created a strobing effect, and security struggled to maintain order. Through it all, Cassandra stood frozen on the runway, her perfect white dress suddenly seeming like a mockery of her situation. Marcus was the first to recover, making a swift move toward the exit. A fashion reporter intercepted him, microphone thrust forward. "Mr. Westfield, did Westfield Group knowingly back a stolen technology?" His mumbled no comment was captured by a dozen cameras as he pushed past. On the runway, Cassandra's professional mask had completely crumbled. "This isn't over," she hissed when I approached, her voice shaking with rage. "You think you've won because of your family name? This is still my industry." "No, Cassandra," I replied quietly, ensuring no microphones would catch my words. "It was never yours to begin with. You just borrowed it for a while." As she was escorted off the runway by exhibition security, the accusatory pointing of her finger toward me was captured by every major fashion publication, an image that would become iconic in industry circles, symbolizing her very public downfall. And in the vacuum created by Cassandra's exit, the exhibition director frantically tried to regain control, unsure how to proceed after such an unprecedented disruption. My mother solved the problem by stepping forward. "I believe this evening's audience came to see innovative fashion," she announced with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. "Perhaps it's time they saw the real thing." With perfect timing, Elena pressed a control panel, and the lights dimmed momentarily before coming up to illuminate my immaculate collection, now arranged on the runway where Cassandra's models had stood moments before. "Ladies and gentlemen," my mother continued smoothly, "Reynolds Textile Global is proud to present Immaculate, the authentic revolution in fabric technology, developed independently by a designer who pursued innovation without compromise." The audience erupted in applause, partly from genuine appreciation, partly from the industry's eternal love of drama, and partly from the instinctive impulse to align with the clear winner of the evening's power struggle. As my models walked the runway originally intended for Cassandra's collection, I stood beside my grandmother, her jasmine perfume a comforting presence amid the chaos we had orchestrated. Not quite how I would have done it, she murmured, a smile playing at her lips, but effective nonetheless. I had to make it memorable, I replied. Oh, it's certainly that. She patted my hand, the texture of her silk gloves smooth against my skin. The fashion industry won't forget this night for decades. She was right. By morning, fashion blogs and industry publications had christened the event the White Runway Massacre, with detailed accounts of how an established designer had been exposed for attempting to steal technology from the previously unknown heiress to the Reynolds textile empire. The narrative was precisely what we had orchestrated, not just a personal victory, but a complete reframing of who I was in the industry's eyes. No longer just another struggling designer, but a force backed by one of the most powerful families in textiles. As the exhibition finally wound down in the early hours of the morning, I stood alone for a moment in the now empty venue. The droplets of wine from our demonstrations had long since been cleaned up, leaving no trace, much like my technology promised. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Media requests flooding in, over 200 and counting. Another message arrived immediately after, from Ellis Reeson. Dramatic but effective. Westfield Group stock down 8% in after-hours trading on news of potential legal liability. Call me tomorrow to discuss next steps. And finally, a message from an unknown number that I instantly recognized as Cassandra's. This isn't over. You've made a powerful enemy. I deleted her message without responding. She was wrong. It was over, at least this chapter. What had begun with wine thrown on my dress had ended with her complete professional humiliation and my emergence as a force in the industry. As I left the venue, the cool night air refreshing against my skin, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. Revenge accomplished was proving to be a complex emotion, gratifying but somehow less fulfilling than I had imagined during those long nights planning Cassandra's downfall. Perhaps because deep down, I knew the truth. This victory hadn't really been about Cassandra at all. It had been about finally embracing who I was and the legacy I had tried to escape. The real challenge was only beginning. The weeks following the Victoria Bishop exhibition passed in a blur of media interviews, investor meetings, and production expansions. Immaculate had gone from promising startup to industry sensation overnight, with pre-orders exceeding our production capacity for the next 6 months. Reynolds Textiles resources had transformed our operation. The cramped studio where we had developed the technology was now supplemented by access to state-of-the-art research facilities and manufacturing capabilities most designers could only dream of. I maintained a careful balance, leveraging my family's resources while ensuring Immaculate retained its independent identity. The narrative we cultivated was of the prodigal heiress who had proven herself on her own terms before reclaiming her heritage. The industry loves that storyline, my publicist explained during one of our strategy sessions. The princess who rejected the crown to earn it. While I focused on expansion, my legal team was systematically dismantling what remained of Cassandra's credibility. The falsified safety reports had triggered investigations by consumer protection agencies, while the patent infringement had opened her to significant liability. Westfield Group had moved quickly to distance themselves, issuing statements claiming they had been misled regarding the originality of the technology. Marcus had disappeared from public view, reportedly retreating to the Westfield family compound in the Hamptons while their legal team assessed the damage. Cassandra, however, refused to go quietly. Her initial shock had hardened into a campaign of desperate attempts to salvage her reputation. She gave tearful interviews claiming she had been set up, that her research had been conducted independently, that the Reynolds family was using their power to crush a self-made designer. Few believed her. The evidence was too overwhelming, and the fashion industry, always quick to abandon those who fall from grace, had already moved on to celebrating me as their newest star. The persistent vibration of my phone interrupted my thoughts as I reviewed fabric samples in my new office, a sleek space in the Reynolds building with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The caller ID showed Elena's name. Cassandra has been trying to reach you, she said without preamble. She's left 7 messages on the office line today alone. What does she want? I asked, though I could guess. To meet. She says it's about a mutually beneficial resolution to your misunderstanding. I almost laughed at the audacity. Delete the messages. There's more, Elena continued. Marcus Westfield was spotted in the lobby this morning, attempting to get past security without an appointment. Said he needed to speak with you urgently about a business opportunity. This was unexpected. Marcus had been notably absent from Cassandra's public defense campaign. For him to appear personally suggested a new approach. Interesting, I mused. What did security do? Escorted him out as per your instructions regarding anyone from Westfield or Miller Designs. I considered this development. After weeks of legal maneuvers and public relations warfare, why would they suddenly seek direct contact? Send me the security footage, I decided, and if either of them tries again, have them told I'll only communicate through legal representatives. That evening, as I reviewed the expansion plans for Immaculate's flagship store, my building's security called to inform me that Cassandra Miller was in the lobby, insisting on seeing me. She's causing quite a scene, the security chief explained, sounding mildly embarrassed. Says she won't leave until you agree to 5 minutes of her time. I sighed, suddenly weary of the drama. Send her up, but have security remain outside my door. When Cassandra entered my office, I barely recognized her. Gone was the polished, confident designer who had dominated Fashion Week events. Her appearance was unkempt, her once perfect hair showing darker roots. Her designer outfit from last season rather than her usual cutting-edge selections. Her pleading voice left messages on my phone that I routinely deleted without listening to their entirety. Thank you for seeing me, she said, an unfamiliar humility in her tone. The scent of her signature perfume seemed excessive now, as if she'd applied too much in nervous preparation for this meeting. 5 minutes, I replied, remaining behind my desk. The clock is running. She sank into the visitor's chair, composing herself visibly before speaking. I want to propose a settlement that benefits us both. My lawyers are handling all settlement discussions, I replied coldly. This isn't about legal settlements. She leaned forward earnestly. This is about salvaging both our futures in the industry. I raised an eyebrow but remained silent. The truth is, she continued, words tumbling out with increasing desperation, my brand is facing bankruptcy. The Westfield Group has withdrawn all funding and support. My retailers are canceling orders. My reputation is, she swallowed hard, damaged beyond repair. And this concerns me how? I asked, though I knew exactly where she was heading. We could merge our brands, she suggested, desperation seeping through her practiced pitch. I still have name recognition, industry connections, a customer base that took years to build. I could work under you, be the creative director while you handle the technology and overall vision. The proposal was so absurd I almost laughed. You want me to rescue the very brand that tried to destroy mine? I'm offering you my expertise, she insisted, my network, my understanding of the market. Together, we could dominate the industry faster than you could alone. With you conveniently maintaining your position and salary while I do all the work of rebuilding your reputation? Her expression hardened momentarily before she forced it back to contrition. I made mistakes, she admitted. I was threatened by your talent, your innovation. But I've learned my lesson. 5 years ago, you stole my designs and pushed me out of the industry, I reminded her, my voice steady despite the surge of old anger. 3 months ago, you tried to steal my technology. 1 month ago, you attempted to destroy my company with false safety allegations. Those aren't mistakes, Cassandra. That's who you are. She flinched at the directness. People can change. Perhaps. But companies make decisions based on evidence, not hopes. I glanced pointedly at my watch. Your 5 minutes are nearly up. Please, she said, something close to genuine fear flickering in her eyes. I have nothing left. The industry has blacklisted me. For a moment, I felt an unexpected twinge of empathy. I remembered the desperation of those early days after her first betrayal, the uncertainty, the fear, the sense of having everything stripped away. But then I remembered it was her actions that had caused both our situations. The industry hasn't blacklisted you, I corrected. It's simply holding you accountable. There's a difference. Before she could respond, my phone rang. The security desk again. Mr. Westfield has arrived, insisting on joining Miss Miller's meeting. The coordination was obvious. They had planned this ambush together. Send him up, I decided. Let's address both issues at once. Minutes later, Marcus strode into my office with a fraction of his usual confidence. Like Cassandra, he showed subtle signs of strain, slight shadows under his eyes, a tie slightly askew, the faint smell of whiskey beneath his expensive cologne. I see you two coordinate your appeals, I observed as he took the second visitor chair. We thought it more efficient, he acknowledged, a ghost of his charming smile attempting to materialize. Time is of the essence for all parties. Meaning your company's stock has continued falling since the exhibition, I translated. Down almost 20% last I checked. His smile faltered. A temporary market overreaction that we're working to correct? With a proposal similar to Cassandra's, I assume? Some form of partnership that conveniently solves your problems while offering me dubious benefits? He exchanged a quick glance with Cassandra before leaning forward. Actually, I'm here to discuss something more substantial. Westfield is prepared to make a significant investment in Immaculate. Minority stake only, with full creative control remaining with you. In exchange for dropping all legal claims regarding the attempted technology theft and falsified safety reports, I guessed, it would be a fresh start for everyone, he confirmed. Plus, Westfield's global distribution network would accelerate your expansion timeline dramatically. I studied them both, these two people who had tried repeatedly to destroy what I'd built, now sitting in my office asking for mercy disguised as collaboration. I have a question for both of you, I said after a moment. What made you think I would ever trust either of you in any capacity after what you've done? Business isn't personal, Marcus replied smoothly. It's about maximizing opportunities and minimizing liabilities. This arrangement would do both. That's where you're wrong, I countered. Business is entirely personal when it involves your life's work. And trust, once broken, has real financial implications. Cassandra leaned forward, desperation radiating from her. I know I hurt you, badly, and I'm sorry, I truly am. But I'm asking, begging, for a chance to make it right. For a brief moment the mask slipped, and I glimpsed the genuine panic beneath her practiced contrition. Her design house was collapsing, her reputation in tatters, her future in the industry she'd do anything to dominate now entirely dependent on my decision. I stood, signaling the end of our meeting. The smooth fabric of my immaculate dress shifted perfectly with the movement, a subtle reminder of what this confrontation was really about. The answer is no, I said simply, to both of you. I have no interest in partnerships built on desperation rather than integrity. You're making a mistake, Marcus warned, his charming facade cracking. Westfield Group can be a powerful ally or a dangerous enemy. You've already been my enemy, I reminded him. It wasn't particularly impressive. Cassandra remained seated, as if physically unable to accept the rejection. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking. I have nowhere else to go. For the first time since she'd entered my office, I felt a flicker of genuine pity. That's the consequence of how you've operated, Cassandra. Not my responsibility to fix. You're enjoying this, aren't you? She accused, bitterness finally breaking through. Watching me beg. No, I answered truthfully. I'm not enjoying it at all. I'm simply protecting what I've built from people who've repeatedly tried to destroy it. Security arrived to escort them out. As they reached the door, I called after them. For what it's worth, I hope you both find something meaningful to build, rather than continuing to take from others. It's ultimately more satisfying. Cassandra turned back, her expression twisted with a final flash of defiance. This isn't the end. Actually, I replied quietly, it is. After they left, I stood at the window, watching as they emerged onto the street below, two diminished figures moving separately in different directions. There was no satisfaction in their defeat, only a quiet relief that this chapter was finally closing. My phone chimed with a message from my grandmother. Heard you had visitors, made the right decision. Dinner tonight to discuss Asia expansion? I smiled at her characteristic blend of personal support and business focus. Yes to dinner, your place at 7. As I gathered my things to leave for the day, Elena appeared in the doorway. Everything okay? Security said Miller and Westfield were both here. Their final attempt at salvation, I confirmed. It didn't go well for them. She studied me carefully. You don't seem as happy about that as I expected. Revenge completes a circle, I explained, surprising myself with the insight. But I'm more interested in what comes next. Outside, the afternoon sun warmed my face as I walked toward the car, waiting to take me to my grandmother's. The city bustled around me, indifferent to personal victories and defeats. I had won, completely and decisively. Cassandra would likely leave the fashion industry altogether, her brand unsalvageable. Marcus would weather this storm through family connections, but his reputation had been severely damaged. Yet standing on the other side of complete victory, I found myself already looking beyond it, to building something lasting rather than simply destroying what had hurt me. Now, perhaps that was the final difference between Cassandra and me. She had always been focused on tearing others down to elevate herself. I had learned that true success comes from creating something worthy of standing on its own. As my car pulled away from the curb, I closed that chapter in my mind and turned my attention to the expanding future of Immaculate, no longer defined by revenge but by possibility.